I'm Sandy from Bernina, Northland, here in New Zealand. These projects are being created for support of our people who are in lockdown. So today's project is a pyramid case. Here's one I've made yesterday, and here's one I've made previously in plain fabrics. I'm using a bit more fancy. So to make these, I've done rectangles of 10 inches by 20 inches, and this white one is my lining. A small rectangle of 2 inches by 11 inches, which is going to be a casing. This circle I drew by using my big cup. It's got a 4-inch diameter. A bigger than I need zip. Now it's going to go on my 10-inch side, but I like it to be much bigger than I need so that I've got plenty of manoeuvring room. I've also got a batting, and it can be any kind of batting that you use. Again, 10 inches by 20 inches. And here's my pretty outer, and again 10 inch by 20 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark my stitching lines. Here's my front that I'm going to be marking on. I'm just going to fold it in half and find the centre. Just right there. And with my pen, I'm just going to mark it so I can't lose that. Then I'm just going to rule line straight down the centre. This is a marker that's going to get washed out later, so I can be as light or as dark marking as I need to be able to see what I'm doing. From that centre mark to one corner, and the same on the other side, that centre mark to the other corner. Oops, my ruler moved. Okay, I've got my centre and my corner, and I'm going to measure 5 inches because I know that's the maths that will give me that halfway point, and I'll take that up to the same mark that I've been using. And I'll do the same on this side. Mark that 5-inch point up to there. And then I'm also going to mark 5 inches down on that shorter side. Up to that same point. And same again. Right, so as you can see, I've got from the centre to 5 inches, centre to the corner, centre to there, centre to centre, centre to there, to the corner, and the other 5 inches. All of those lines I'm going to stitch on. Cut. So now I've got all my lines drawn, I'm going to layer that with my batting. Now, depending on what you're using as your batting is how well that might want to stay together while you're doing the stitching. So, wonderful product called 505 spray that we have in the shop, and just spray a little bit. It's a temporary glue, and it will just keep the 2 layers from moving while I do my stitching. I'll lean back the other edge and see how that's already glued. Just enough to make it stick down. Now those two layers are not going to come apart while I do my stitching. Let's go over to my machine and do some stitching. So here I am at my machine. I'm going to stitch on all those lines I've drawn. I'm not going to do just a plain straight stitch. I'm going to play with my fancy stitches and nominate some that I like. Now it doesn't matter what they are, you nominate what you like. And I'm going to do my first one from my very centre to a corner. Now I don't have to start right at the edge because there's going to get a lot of stitching in this area, and then I'm going to cover that up. So my machine's going to tie a knot, and then it's going to stitch all the way down to the corner. So this takes a little bit of time because it is a fancy stitch, it's not just going straight ahead. What I'm focusing on doing is keeping the centre of my foot on my marked line. So I'm nearly at my corner, and I'm just going to keep going until I get to that edge. And so long as I finish inside what will be my seam allowance, that's as close as I need to get. So I'm going to finish there. My machine cuts and ties my thread for me. I'm going to reset my stitch so that it starts at the beginning, but there's my first row. Now I'm going to do the same stitch on the other corner. So again, I'm going to do the same stitch on the line that goes down to the other corner, again beginning at that apex there. And off I go again. Now I deliberately do not go as fast as what my machine is capable of because it's a fancy stitch I'm using that is going back and forth quite a lot, and what I want is great quality stitching rather than getting my project finished as fast as I possibly can. Here I am, nearly at the corner. Again, I will just get to within the seam allowance. And cut my thread again. So I've got 2 rows of the same stitching. This time I'm going to do the very centre line, and I'm going to use a completely different stitch again. And it's quite nice to use different stitches, just adds extra interest to it. So starting at that apex and again going all the way down to the edge. Noting how I'm using a contrasting thread so that even on my fancy fabric it does show up. All of these fancy stitches make the fabric go back and forth quite a lot. So note I'm not really holding my fabric. All I'm doing is keeping it straight on that drawn line using the centre of my presser foot to show me where that is. But I'm letting the machine take my fabric and that batting back and forth, doing some great stitching. It's a lovely day outside in Northland, New Zealand here. I think we're on day 13 of our lockdown. Some people are getting a little bit cabin fever. However, I've been really enjoying being home, being able to do lots of stitching. So far, I'm not finding it too difficult at all. If you are looking for a project to be doing while we're in lockdown, do have a look at our website and our blog. And I put a challenge here for anybody living in Northland, New Zealand to have a go. It's called The View Outside My Window. Read the conditions and have some fun with it. It doesn't have to be a machine stitched project. What's important is that you have some fun and don't get cabin fever. Here I am nearly at the bottom, and I'll just get down to being within that seam allowance, and then I'll knot and cut my threads. So this time I'm going to use a third stitch. I'm going to start at the apex, go down that way and down that way, so that like these two are the same stitch, these two here will be as well. So I've completed that set of stitching again now, and my last set now will come from the apex down to that halfway point on each of the short sides. So just a moment while I do that one too. So what fancy stitch makes a good stitch? It's the one you like. You can tell this stitch here is much heavier than this stitch, so it's quite nice to have the combination of both a heavier triple stitch and a single stitch layer. Gives more interest to your end project. So now I've finished all of my stitching. The ones that have got two lines into the same place, I've done the same type of stitching, and my centre line is completely separate. Now I've made a boo-boo. Have a look at this. There's my blue circle on the back and I've stitched right through it. However, it's not going to be a problem. I'm simply going to cut off close to my stitching because I don't use all of my blue circle anyway. I'll show you that in a moment. So let's go back to my desk. So back at my desk, the first thing I'm going to do is remove that blue circle. Now, it's really not going to be a problem that is there at all, so I'm not worried about it at all. My next step is my blue circle. What I want to do is fold it in half, just a little bit harder because I've just cut it, and give it a crease. Then using that crease as a marker, I'm going to lay my ruler on and cut it, and I'm going to cut it half an inch away from that centre. So that piece that I had stitched under is not a problem. I've got all of the circle that I need. My blue circle is then going to be folded the other way, so I've got the centre going the other way as well. Okay, now that I've got my markings on my blue circle, I'm just going to use my glue pen, which is a sew liner pen, and I'm just going to put a line of glue around the edge of my circle, and then just enough on the inner of it to hold it in place. I'm going to line up my centre markings on what I had drawn earlier and hold it down. Oh, now look who's come to visit. We've got Tiffany at our feet. Come and say hello. Here's Tiffany. She's my pug. She's known as Bernina Tiffany. She's come to say hello to us all. Down you go, honey. Make a feature of it. Right, that's nicely glued on there, and now I'm going to stitch down that edge. So come over to my machine. Now I've got the option of using my same thread so it contrasts on my blue, or I could match my stitch to being hiding in with the blue. I'm going to contrast it so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm also going to change my foot. I'm changing my foot to the number 23 foot, which is my applique foot. The reason for that is it's got lovely grooves in it to help me line up perfectly so that my stitching is right on the edge of my fabric. I'm going to use the basic blanket stitch to secure this piece of blue fabric down. So I'm lining up the side of the blue fabric with the cutout of the foot, and it's giving me a perfect edging to go around. I'm just moving my project slightly around as I go because it's a gentle enough curve that I don't actually need to reposition my foot all the time. And again, knot and cut my thread. And you can see how that is just a beautiful edging around on that blue fabric. Now, if I want to, I can go and put my name in here if I would like. And what I would do is just centre myself somewhere in here. However, I'm not going to do my name. I'm just going to do a single fancy stitch. So I'm going back to my standard number 1 foot. Put my jewel feed back on because I'm going through so many layers. So instead of writing my name, I'm just going to centre a long stitch between a couple of my lines and make it a bit of a decorative piece. I might just do another half of it. You can see I've got just a lovely little stitching on there. Let's go back to my desk and put this all together. I'm just going to cut some of my long threads. I know they're completely secure because my machine has cut and knotted at the same time, just so that that's nice and neat on the front. Now, this pyramid is lined and has a zipper in it. And I'm going to show you the one I did the other day. So here's my big zipper, and inside it's all lined. So that's what we're going to go on to right now. I want to place my zipper in between my lining and my front. So I'm going to put the top of my zipper to the short edge, and again I'm just going to use my fabric glue and just dab it down the edge. So much easier than pins. Then I'm going to do the same with my lining. I'm just going to dab along on the edge of my zipper. Then line up my lining. The most important thing to remember with that is the head of your zipper goes to the same edge as the circle you've got. Now, to be doubly secure, I'm going to use a few wonder clips to just hold that all in place. My habit is that I use them upside down and up the right way because I think it holds it nicely secure. I'm just going to go and sew that down. So here we are again. I've changed my foot to my zipper foot, which is my number 4 foot. I've kept the same colour thread at this point because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to line up the side of my foot with the side of my project. And stitch down this side. Knot and tie. Then I'm going to go and put the other side of my zip in. Come over to my... So, here's the first side of my zipper in between my lining and my top. Now I want to get this side in between. So I'm going to bring my top over and I'm going to line up so that I'm straight on these edges as well as this edge. Again, use a bit of my fabric glue. And glue that zipper in place. Then I'm going to just curl up my inner, do exactly the same thing again. Making sure that I'm lining up the 3 edges. And although that glue is holding it so nicely, I'll just use a few wonder clips to hold it. Now see how my lining is curled the same as what my front is, but the zipper is in between everything. Sew that one down. That glue holds everything in place so well, nothing can pucker. Then if I take my inner, I can wrap that around all the layers and I can see I've got a lovely clean edge on the inside. Now if I turn it all the way out, I've got a lovely exposed zip on the outside, and look how my stitching is meeting on the edges. Now to be doubly secure, I'm going to open my zip, and this is why I like it much longer than it needs to be, and I'm going to roll those edges down, clip them, so that both my inner and my top is rolled away from my zipper. And this is again where the wonder clips just are wonderful. I'm going to still use my zipper foot and I'm going to top stitch down that edge. I'm going to move my needle right over to the other edge. I'm going to increase my length to 3 instead of just my standard stitching length. Then as close or as far away as I'm comfortable, I'm going to stitch down that rolled edge. means when I'm using my pyramid, my zip can never get stuck. And I'll do the same for the other edge. And now I'll just do the same for the other edge, rolling it down, clipping it and stitching it. I won't be a moment. So we're back at my desk and you can see both edges have been top stitched down. And now as I move that zip back and forth, it's never going to be caught at all. And I've got that lovely stitching on the inside too. So now, how do we go from this to this? Let's have a look. I'm going to pull the whole thing inside out again, so that I've got my lining separate to my outer piece. And I'm looking for where my circle is. Now, it's easiest if I open up that zip all the way, because I'm going to sew both edges separately. I'm going to curl the edges of my zip towards the inner. And I'm going to again use my wonder clips to just hold that. I'm going to match my two edges of my circle and hold that one. And hopefully that means that my very centre of my circle is right there. Who can hear Tiffany snoring? Just pin it in between. Now the same with my lining. I'm just going to roll that out, find the centre and use a couple of clips to hold that one down. Now I'm going to go and stitch those. Come on over. So I'm back at my sewing machine. I've changed my foot back to my normal number 1 standard foot, and I've also changed my thread to being white to match my inner. I'm going to line up the side of my presser foot and I'm going to stitch along. Now my little habit is to start slightly in, reverse back to the edge and then come forward again. Just means that the very apex of my project is held very securely. Now I'm coming along to where my zipper matches to the lining, but I'm not going to stitch over my zipper at all. I'm going to stop at the very edge of my zipper. And I'm just going to reverse back that little bit and then cut my threads again. And then I'm going to do the same on my lining. This is the beauty of wonder clips. I'm still clipped the right way around. No pins on the wrong edge. So again, I'm just starting slightly in, and I'm going to reverse up to the edge and then carry on. And again, I'm going to stop when I get to my zipper. I'm not actually going to stitch through my zipper. Now some of you will be brave to go right up to it, others will stop a stitch before. Either one is fine. Just reverse up and then knot and cut your threads. Now as I pull my lining around my outer, you can see that my zipper stops right at that edge. Now I've actually stopped too far away and I can see my raw edge there, so I'm just going to take the time to stitch a little bit closer. So I've just restitched that a little bit better for myself. Now the edges of my zip I can now cut off. I just use a little pair of scissors straight through. It's about an inch or so beyond it. Now that corner is finished. I can push my lining up to where my circle is. I can even do my zipper back up. And look at that, I've made a square. Let's make it into a pyramid. So here's my square. What I want to do is actually turn it lining side out. And I do want to have my zipper open a little bit, but not beyond that edge. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to line the centre of my zipper with the centre of my stitching that went straight down, making sure that my lining is also even with that edge. So there's my stitching, centre of my zip, all my raw edges are together, and I'll hold them with a couple of wonder clips. My stitching that I went to that 5-inch mark will be right in that corner, and again I can match all my raw edges and clip them. Same on the other side. Now I'm going to stitch across that whole edge. So again I'm going to start slightly in and reverse up over the folded edge before going across the raw edge, making sure my zip and everything sits nice and flat. While I'm at my zipper, what I'm going to do is reverse back over it before coming forward again. So I've got 3 layers of stitching holding that zipper shut. And off I go all the way. Again, right off the edge, reverse it up, and then cut my thread. There's my bottom edge done. So there's my sewn edge. I'm going to clip my zip equal to that edge. So there's my stitched edge. I've cut my zipper, and that is an ugly raw edge, and that's what we're going to use that last rectangle of fabric to make a cover to encase all of that. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to the iron and we're going to press that edge in, and then I'm going to press the raw edges up to the centre fold that I make. So just let me do that. I'm just giving it a press, then raw edges together and raw edge into that first pressing. Just careful of your fingers. And the same on the other edge. And then you can actually press the whole thing into one. Now, going to go to the machine, having opened all those edges up again, and I'm going to make an edging on both of those short edges. So, just using the side of my presser foot as my guide of where it needs to be. Again, coming to that edge, reversing up before I cut. And both ends. Using an awl to get a lovely crisp corner, pushing out those edges. Okay, it's ready to go onto our pyramid. The edge with the zippers showing and the right side of our casing together, you'll see that that just sits over the edges. Again, using our wonder clips, just going to hold that down. There we go. I'm just going to hold that as close to that edge as I can while I get it in under the presser foot. Doesn't matter if I don't stitch exactly to the folded edge, just as close as I'm comfortable. What I am going to try and stitch on is that crease that we did with the iron. And if you need to, err on the side of being inside towards the raw edge of that creasing. All the way over our zipper. To the other folded edge. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't get right to the edge, just as far as you are comfortable. Now what we're going to do is fold everything over so that that raw edge is encased inside. And again, I'll use my clips to hold it all down and stitch across it. Just give me a moment to prepare that. So I've got that all clipped, ready to sew. I'm going to sew along from the edge that has not got the zipper because that's already stitched down. I'm going to change feet to my number 10 edge stitch foot. Makes it really easy to do this kind of stitching using my number 10 foot. I put the fold of the fabric to the tooth of the foot. You can see how the fold of the fabric is right at the tooth of the foot. I'm going to move my needle over so it's going to stitch inside where that fold is. And I'm going to reverse up onto the edge of there. And I'm just going to use my awl to hold it perfectly at that tooth of my number 10 foot. awl just gives me a little bit more control to get right to the very edge without getting my fingers close. Reverse up, knot and cut. How's that for stitching? And on the other side you can barely see it. Okay, now let's get it all sorted. So here I am, having finished all the stitching. I just need to turn everything out the right way. I use my awl to get those corners out really nicely. And what you'll find is one of your stitching rows is right at the corner. Just does a really nice touch, isn't it? That's one of those 5-inch markers. Then I'll do the same for my apex of everything. And that's usually the harder one to get to come out to a nice point. So just take your time and let it happen. There's my last point coming out now. Do my zipper up. There's my pyramid, ready for putting all sorts of things in. Is it pencil case? Is it my sewing goodies? This one here has got my thread supply in there. It's very full. They also, if you are a knitter, make a great knitting project bag. You can have your yarn in there, your small project in there, and even when you're knitting, just open it slightly and your yarn comes out of there instead of being rolling around on the floor. So go and make yourself some pyramids. 10 inches by 20 inches is my measurement to make this size, but you can make it 5 inches by 10 inches to make a smaller one if that's what you prefer. Again, Sandy from Bernina, Northland in New Zealand. Hope you've enjoyed this. Go and make one for yourself. Bye.